We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And welcome back to another episode of the Golden Blogs podcast, the Bearcast. During this bye week, we're here to talk about the halfway point of the season, and as always, with me is my co-host, Andy. Andy, how you doing?
Doing great. Alive after the Oregon game, so can't complain.
Yeah, we are recording this after the Oregon game, but this will be, if you're listening to this, you're listening to this during the bye week, so it's a week before. But not only is it just the two of us, we have a very special guest with us today. We have a Cal football alumni here with us with a little intro for him. He was a top 10. He's a top 10 career in passing yards and also in single season. He's a top 10 in the record books in passing touchdowns in his career, and he is also the top 10 player in total offensive yards in his career and in a single season, and is also top 5, I believe, in total touchdowns in his career. And we have with us Kevin Riley. Kevin, how you doing? Welcome to the Bearcat.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Very excited to be here. Love watching your guys' stuff on Cal football. And the last little bit was sadly the last quarterback to beat Stanford, which is just depressing.
Oh, but we do remember you. We do remember that year. I mean, there's been, I think, two, we talked about this stat, but there's been two graduating, like, full circulation of Cal students that have not seen us with the axe, which is depressing if you put it into that perspective as well. But yeah, sorry, we have some technical difficulties here, so you might hear us echo in this a little bit, but bear with us. But we'll get right to it. I think what we're gonna do here is the first 20 minutes or so, we're just gonna talk to Kevin about his playing time and his time at Cal, and then we're gonna move on to talking about the midway point in the season, talk about our expectations so far, what we expect for the latter half of the season, and some other topics along that route. But for starters, my first question to you, Kevin, is your time at Cal. Do you have a favorite restaurant? Like, do you still go back, and is there one place you always have to go visit?
I do. Love food. For any recruits that listen to this, there's no better food place in a college town than Berkeley. But I'd have to I go back to a few spots. Always enjoyed Brazil Cafe, the Pedro's favorite tri-tip sandwich. Gregoire's potato puffs with the aioli. Those always got me. It's in North Berkeley. And a random spot kind of by my old place on Fulton, but it's a Easy Stop Deli, would have fresh turkey sandwiches that were rotisserie style. So that was always a good one too, and it was pretty affordable for a college kid. So
those are some solid picks. And Andy is going off in the chat right now saying yes and double yes. But Andy, I'll toss to you. Your turn to ask Kevin a question.
All right, sweet. So I guess we're jumping right into it. Well, actually, why don't we keep it with the going back theme? So you mentioned I think it was the 09 big game, but like, what would be your favorite game from your playing time at Cal?
'09 big game for sure. Great environment at Stanford. It was more Cal people than Stanford, which I think any Cal fan knows that Stanford fans are the worst. But just starting that game down 14-0, nothing really going right, and then us just physically dominating them, grinded out drives, especially when I think they had back-to-back wins at Arizona and the Jim Harbaugh, Pete Carroll, what's your deal game, and it was that was just a fun game, especially against your rival. But there's a lot of games in there. Even '08 year, '09, we had a good run there after we lost back to back to Oregon and SC and had some good wins. But yeah, it's a great time. Every game besides the losses were always fun.
Did you know that Tiger Woods was in the audience for that game, or did you find out after?
I found out after, but I mean, ever since, that was the start of his downfall. I think it was the next week where him and his wife had their falling out, and then his golf game went down the drain. So I let everybody know that as well. So that's a good one.
That's a hell of a resume booster right there. Not only did you beat Stanford, but then you also took down Tiger Woods.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I got one for you. Do you have any non-football related memory that you can point to during your time at Cal?
So many. It's tough. I mean, obviously the biggest is meeting my wife, and still living in the Bay Area. But I mean, just the lifelong relationships with everybody in the Cal community, not just the football players, but all groups from Cal. I mean, I left home and I haven't moved back, so there's a reason, and fell in love with Cal on my first visit and the Bay Area in general. So,
all right, Andy, you got one?
Yeah. How many games do you make it back to now that you're still in the Bay Area? Is that right?
Yeah, lived in the city for a while, and I'm actually up in Sausalito now, so no complaints. I have a nice little view, but I go back. It depends on the year, but I usually go back to 2 to 3 games a year, I would say. And then I sometimes I get a little flustered. It's almost like watching it by myself, but it's always fun to go back, and I usually go back with ex-players as well. So.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for the solo watch. That's how I was watching that Washington game solo. My wife, I don't know if she exactly likes to hang out with me anymore when I watch Cal games. It's just a stressful experience for everybody involved.
I hear you.
All right. I guess we'll lead into our next question. I think, your playing days, I mean, honestly, all three of us we're in our 30s now, and I think no one really knows what it's like to be a Power 5 quarterback. And I think when I was definitely in college, like, I looked at those football players and they didn't feel like college students to me. They felt like something more than that. But for you as a college football player, and especially a Power 5 quarterback, like, what's the preparation like beyond just practice? Like, how much time are you putting in your spare time, like, when you were a starter versus when you were a backup, just like some of those differences and what the weekly, quarterback goes through?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like, I was going through it and looking back at it, I'm like, oh man, I was a lot busier then than I am now. But your basic day from starting, which was a long time for me, you have about 6 to 8 hours, I would say, at the stadium. When we were there, that includes, meals included, but your workouts, your meetings, and I don't know if meetings are the same now as they were then, but Coach Tedford was a big meeting guy where we usually had at least an hour and a half during the season, or maybe 45 minutes to an hour towards the later years before practice. And then you have like a little afternoon practice meeting as well. And then besides that, I would say it probably averaged about season-wise 2 hours of film by myself, for an hour and a half to 2 hours of film a night. With that, and then obviously you have all your classes during the day, and you got to take care of school as well. So it's definitely a long day. And then off season wise, it's just more time training, and But you obviously practices. And gosh, spring ball when I was there, I think we still had meetings every day, but it was probably 3 to 4 hours less a day than it is during the season. And then if you get injured, obviously you have the rehab aspect of it. So that's at least an hour of extra rehab a day or more, depending on how severe your injury is and if you got to loosen up before practice and post practice rehab as well. They were long days, and I feel bad for the guys who got hit every single day, because our practices were pretty physical when we were there as well. So the box guys definitely felt it, and I'm like, what's wrong? Just throwing the ball every day to them. So that, I would say, that's your typical day. And then for a D1 quarterback, if people are interested in it, for extra film study, I kind of set it up as the way we did weekly practices. So our Mondays were kind of first, second down overall game plan we'd put in, but we wouldn't really practice all the third down concepts or red zone concepts that early in the week. So it'd be more, you watch a couple full game of film Monday night by myself. Usually teams that kind of mirror you, run similar formations and everything like that. You also look at formation group of film. So a lot of our film was, we had concept was Washington a lot, but we watched a lot of Stanford, Oregon State, SC, and things like that during that time, to kind of go off other teams' defenses. Tuesday would be a little goal line third down, and Wednesday was a big goal line third down as well. And then Thursday night would be a full game or like a half and a half of games. You've watched so much film at that time already. You should be prepared, but you still watch a little bit more. And that was kind of your week.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing that and also just talking to the players, on the team right now. I mean, it's incredible what you guys do, not just on the field, but like the practice, and you still go to class like the rest of us, which is even more baffling considering like all the work that you guys did that early in the morning or after school and all those workouts. Like, man, I definitely could not be able to do that. It takes I think a special type of perseverance and like want to be that good at a specific craft. But man, that's incredible. But I will toss it to Andy for his. I think he's got another question for you.
Yeah. So bringing it a little bit more. Well, I guess if we want to revisit the 2007 season, what was it? What was it like? All right, so let's flash back, right? So we had the Oregon game. Nate gets hurt. What was it like coming into that environment in Autzen? And then from there on out, like taking over, kind of like going through the balance of the rest of that season where it sort of wasn't totally clear, like who the starter was. I mean, anything you can kind of shed light on there would be super interesting.
Yeah, so 07 was interesting too because during fall camp, we had another quarterback on the roster named Kyle Reed, and there was really competition for second string, and I beat out Kyle, and he transferred to San Jose State. But going into that, our practices with Tedford originally during those years was about 80-20, so you go 10 reps, first string would get 8, and then second string would get 2. And so when Nate got hurt in that Oregon game, they put me in the fourth quarter. I think we were up 7 or something like that. But I could say I definitely was ready, but wasn't. I mean, that was a big atmosphere to go into. And if I had to finish that one, it would have been interesting as well. I mean, I think I ran one play. It was like 3rd and 15, and we tried to run like a little trap inside. And I can't remember which D tackle almost like stole the handoff from me. But that was the only play I played in that game. And we had a bye week after that, and I knew there was a chance I was going to play against Oregon State. They didn't really, I go through it, so we had a bye week, so I'm getting all the reps. Coach Daft, who was quarterback's coach at the time, took extra time with me, and I spent extra time, obviously, after hours with him, going through the plan, and then the next week. But I didn't find out I was starting until after pregame warm-up when we went back into the locker room. That's when I found out I was going to play that game against Oregon State.
Goodness. So it was very last minute.
Yeah, that's kind of how Coach rolled at that time. So maybe been better, like not thinking as much. Maybe that was his thought process on it, but I went into that game thinking I was going to play the whole time.
So that makes me wonder, like Mike Riley was obviously a kind of like a nightmare for us for a long time. Was there any other coach out there in your tenure that you kind of went up against that was just like you knew it was going to be like a tough game?
Yeah, I think people forget at that time, Oregon State, in the later years of my career, their defense wasn't as good, even though we struggled against them. But early on in that, even the year before I played, 06, 07, 08, they had, I think 07, they had a top 10 defense in the country. They always go those wide ends and super athletic. Their linebackers can move. They're a good team. I mean, obviously, we always struggled with SC. That was a combo of them being really good and I think us just psyching ourselves out a little bit. Oregon became tough with Chip, even though my senior year when I was injured, our defense played a hell of a game. I think if I play in that one, we're winning for sure. But there was, I'm thinking, those are really the only ones I would say that going in, and weirdly Oregon State was just one of those pain in the ass games that we struggled with.
All right, I guess it's back to me. I guess to tie all this talk back, I don't know if you've been back and maybe seen practice or talked to the staff or the players, but if you have, do you have any impressions of the current staff, to any like similarities you see with your time with Tedford at the program? Just because we know Wilcox was a grad assistant and coached under Tedford for a few years here as well.
Yeah, so Wilcox was actually my area recruiter during the recruiting process. I mean, Coach Tedford really recruited me, but he was my everyday contact if I had anything. So I actually got to know Justin pretty well, and him being from Oregon, it made sense. And then with the practices, I went his first spring and watched the practices, watched the teams compete, and I heard it was pretty similar to some of the older guys I talked to when Tedford first got there, kind of changing the program, making people work, having everybody just compete. There's no one on the team getting more slack. You could be the best player or the worst player. Like, it doesn't matter. Everybody's treated the same, which I think Justin did a good job of taking that from Coach Peterson, which I've, just from outside perspective watching. I mean, look at his first year at UW, how he kicked off, I think, the top two players, and then the next year the top player off his team, and they're really good players in the NFL now. But I think that's the way you can keep it every year in, year out consistency with young guys, teaching them what it's like at the school. And then in terms of the staff, if Cal fans aren't impressed with the team and the character of the team, then I don't know where you'd be happy about, anything like that. And but I love the staff. Hopefully we can keep them together as long as possible. It's going to be tough. They have a lot of top coaches that a lot of top schools in the country are going to go after. And as I think all the Cal community knows, it's kind of tough to keep hold of those top guys with money and living in the Bay Area. So.
Wow. Yeah. Andy?
Yeah, so we've touched on this kind of a little bit. But if let's fast forward to this season and what we saw at ASU. When we saw Modster kind of come in when Chase went out, which with what I think at this point was broken collarbone. What is it like to hop into that type of situation, and what type of challenges does someone like Modster face, and how long do you think is really fair to kind of give him to be, let's say, like ramped up?
Yeah, it's always a different situation going into a game from an injury. I don't think you obviously mentally prepare as best as you can as the backup, and seeing Chase get hurt, which I think was a broken collarbone as well. I've done it twice in my life, and that's what it looked like. But it's just tough. I mean, Arizona State does have a solid defense. Besides the Colorado game, I mean, they've looked pretty good. I know Michigan State struggles on offense, but, I mean, you hold the Big Ten team at Michigan's at their home field to 7 points or whatever it was. You're solid, and you have some good players. And it just looks like he went in there and, that first pick probably rattled him a little bit. Bad decision on that cover 2 throw. Just put a little too much air on it. But I mean, against Oregon, he played a lot better. Oregon has a really good defense, and we were pretty banged up. But you could tell he threw the ball a lot better and with more confidence last week against a better opponent than he did the week before. So I think he'll improve, and that's with 1 week of practice. And I think the bye week came at a perfect time for him to get a lot of the reps and continue to improve. And I don't know when the eligibility thing was in question if he was taking reps, but that obviously affects his growth with the program as well.
Is there any advice that you'd have from one Cal quarterback to the other about I don't know, any advice that you might have for him?
Yeah, I mean, the best advice would just be get with your coach and go over the game plan, making sure you are solid. And, it's just kind of like when you start a new job or something like that, just asking as many questions as possible, being prepared as possible, having great practices, continue to watch film, just have no question about the game plan and any situation. And just know that your teammates are behind you. And if you make a mistake, it's whatever. That's the biggest thing is mistakes happen in games, and you just got to go in the next series with the same confidence. And, when you start playing, trying not to make a mistake, you could see just the downplay in terms of like timing and everything like that with a quarterback.
All right. Yeah, I got a question for you. Last season, especially with the quarterbacks, after Ross went down, we had this whole thing of like this going back between two guys just because they had different skill sets and experience, and it was neither here nor there, and it and all culminated in the now infamous Cheez-It Bowl. But I think you kind of went through that. If I'm looking at the stats correctly, if my memory serves me right too, you kind of went through that in 2008 as well. Like when you're in that type of situation where, as you said, you're getting ready to play no matter what, but does it mess with like your rhythm or your confidence just because like you don't know if you're going to go in on the next drive or the next play, or if the other guy is about to get in? Like, from a quarterback's view, like what did you kind of see from the situation with the quarterbacks from last season?
I think it's 08 was very different in terms of going into the year, me being named to start over Nate, but Nate playing in the second quarter, and who knows if Nate didn't throw those 2 picks, who knows what would have happened after that. But going the next games, I think I got benched against Colorado in the third quarter when we were winning like 42-3 or something like that. So that definitely was like shook my confidence a little bit, being like, oh man, like it doesn't matter how the team's playing, it's individual. And then I think Nate played a game and a half, and then he got benched in the third or fourth quarter, and they were kind of like, hey, Kevin, make some magic, go do some things. And when I went in those situations in the third and fourth quarter, it was, we were behind, so we opened up the playbook, and it was, you couldn't really hold back, so you kind of had to throw, and the other team knew you were throwing as well. They started bringing like blitz pressures and things like that. So it's definitely a difficult situation, but it's the hand you're dealt, and you got to deal with that. And I think Chase in that bowl game, obviously, I don't know if he had bad practices leading up to the bowl game, but I mean, I haven't watched their film, but I mean, from the game, those picks were bad. I mean, they were, triple coverage, misreads, you could tell. So the coaches probably just lost a little confidence and were trying to do something else in that situation. But, Chase was playing a lot better this year, especially in his last few games, as the coaches have mentioned and everybody has mentioned. He definitely looked like he was coming into his own, throwing with timing, throwing with more confidence. I mean, you could see the ball coming off with better zip in his hand as well. So it's a bummer that he got injured at his time as well.
Andy, to you?
Yeah, just off that, like, what was your reaction to the North Texas game, and then what was your reaction to the Ole Miss game? I don't know if you listen to the podcast, but we had a pretty like down podcast after the North Texas game, where it seemed like Chase was just outright refusing to throw the football, and then literally a week later, it was like slinging it out there against Ole Miss, best game as Cal Bear by far. So I was curious, like, what your read was on that, like, week-to-week progression.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like North Texas. I think they run like a old BYU style, like 3-3-5, which is definitely a different look, and not a ton of people are running that as much, which Oregon actually ran it a little bit as well. But it just looked like, and again, it's hard. I didn't go to the game. I was out of town. But from the TV copy, just lack of confidence, questioning it. And I think you could see some guys were open, but it was like almost where he got to that second window and just held on to it. And then the next week, the reads were there. He got down to his third read from his first like progression reads, thrown with confidence. So it was I wasn't expecting it initially. I knew he needed to play like that for us to win, and he did. And he looked good the whole entire game, looked comfortable. He always seems calm and collected, which is great. So I think he just had a good week of practice, had a good week of film, and felt confident going into that game. And North Texas probably just did some things that he wasn't expecting, and just didn't have a ton of confidence in his reads that game. That's my guess.
Is there any player on staff or on the team right now that's like your absolute favorite?
I think he's everybody's favorite, but I do enjoy watching Weaver. And not just from, like, obviously he's such a great linebacker, but more just from his attitude of, like, after that game, having the team not quit. Heard he's a great locker room guy, and after your quarterback gets injured, pushing people up. I love all the secondary. Obviously defense is fun to watch. And offense, guys have improved drastically. I think even though we may not be showing it in points, I think our offense is better than it was last year. Last year we did some good things, but it seems more consistent. And with how many injuries we've had, it's really hard to judge. So,
all right. I guess we should wrap up this and actually talk about the season so far. But I think the last question we kind of had for you is, this thing of the new endorsement deal that's been passed around, or not been passed around, but has recently been passed, and the topic has been passed around and talked about to various coaches across college football and college basketball as well, with basketball season quickly approaching. We wanted to ask, what kind of endorsements would you have done if this endorsement deal was available for you at the time? And is there like any specific places maybe in Berkeley or the Bay Area that you would have loved to like put your name, likeness, or image up with?
Yeah, it's a different. Thinking about it now, actually doing endorsements, and this discussion's been going on for so long with the likeness, and I don't know what that does with like jersey sales or anything like that as well, but local endorsements, if I was in school and like you could relate it, I'm guessing it'd probably just be some local food spots, with the Brazil Cafe owner trying to do some with that so I can get free sandwiches if that was possible. But Buffalo Exchange, maybe down there on Telegraph. That's where I bought my hand-me-down clothes that I needed. I'm trying to think. I probably would have tried to get with some tech company that's starting up somewhere to get a little endorsement deals is there as well. I mean, if kids want to, the Bay Area is the best place to get endorsements with all the companies that are everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. I would have money from jerseys would have been great though.
Yeah, they don't do it anymore, but they used to every year when they printed out the new jerseys, it'd be a number of one of the guys that was pre-hyped that year. Whether it was your number 13 or Keenan's 21 or Javid's number 4 or I believe I have a gold Zach Follett jersey somewhere as well. 34. Andy's typing in 56, 13. Yeah, all those numbers. I mean, they don't do that anymore. They just go with the year number. But it's interesting to hear that conversation. But let's pivot there and talk about the season. I'm going to leave it to you two guys to talk about the season. I'm just going to direct the conversation today. So first off, I guess I'll toss it to Andy, just because he's the co-host, and I think it'll help Kevin just get into a bit of a rhythm of how to and what to talk about. So the first 6 games of the season, I want your reactions and thoughts, Andy.
Okay, perfect timing, because I had to sit with 19 Ducks fans at the Oregon game this weekend, and a full section of Oregon fans too, so that was quite the experience to kind of temper my expectations with. But it's really hard for me right now. I've spent most of yesterday on my flight home trying to assess where everything is at, and I'm overwhelmingly positive with it because the team's 4-2, but it is one of those things where you start looking at my 8-win expectation, and so we have to do some good things for the rest of the year. I think I saw that Cal, there's a couple projections for them to go 5-4 in conference. That means some pretty big wins, and it probably means beating Stanford. So I'm looking too far ahead, but to go back, the biggest surprise is easily beating Washington at Washington. Didn't expect it early in the year. At first, I was going to be thank goodness we got them early, and then Washington goes to Stanford and looks terrible. And now I'm we would have beaten them anyways. So, who knows about that. And then I think that this Oregon game is there's no way we can talk about the first half of this year and not talk about the ridiculous amount of injuries that we've had. And watching Mike Safel leave on a cart out of that, and I didn't even see it in the stands, and then I saw him just leaving on a cart and was just oh my goodness. Our O-line is depleted. Our both of our running backs are hurt in some form. We lost our starting quarterback. We lost Kakoa Crawford. It doesn't even take into account McCallan Castle's leaving the program. And then you also have other nicks and injuries that we don't even know about. So Stephen Coots is somebody that I projected to win us a game this year in my hot fire projections, and it seems like he's not kicking the same way. And he's doing these kicks that are reliant on big rolls. And so it's just been really fascinating to watch how much injuries have played out, and yet we're 4-2. And 8 regular season wins are totally reasonable to expect, and potentially a bowl win. So I think I'm right where I would hope to be, but it's just a crazy thing how kind of expectations can kind of weigh on you throughout the course of a season.
And Kevin?
Yep. No, I wait. Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's hard to assess. I mean, we win ugly, but we win. And that's something I think you look at all the games, and Washington was a great win. Our defense stepped up big, and offense had one drive when we needed to have a drive. Oregon was going to be tough with the injuries, and then, like you said, with Saffold getting hurt, that just made it even harder. I had 8 wins as a prediction as well, and the hard thing is every game you go into with Cal. I mean, I think besides if we played the Big Four, I think we could beat anybody. I mean, that's just kind of how this team plays. And we need to get healthier. And it's going to be tougher if we lose more bodies. The guys have stepped up and played well when they can't, when they get the opportunity. Offensively, obviously, we need to create more points. We can't depend on the defense to have so many red zone / our side of the field stops. I think there's just going to be a couple games where, we need to definitely need to score more. And the biggest thing for our offense with that is just penalties. I think we can move the ball in all the games, but once our offense gets any type of backward movement, I don't think I would like to see the stats on touchdowns and either false start or holding penalties, because I think in the last few years it's probably somewhere around like 5% success rate in scoring. So that I would say that's the biggest thing. But get healthy and grow some confidence in this bye week with the guys that we currently do have will be very beneficial.
All right, with that, I'll toss it to Andy. Since Kevin talked about the offense, so I'll give it to you so you can talk about the offense.
Yeah, I actually had a quick question to kind of start off with. Kevin, I know, at least when I was with the team, Andy Ludwig was the offensive coordinator. Who was your favorite offensive coordinator to work with? And then when you look at the offense that we've run in the Beau Baldwin era, is there any aspect of it that kind of drives you crazy that we don't do that one thing?
Yeah. I had 4 OCs in 5 years. So all of them did things I liked. Dunbar in 06, I didn't get to work with them, but I liked the offense that year. They opened it up a little bit more. And then 07 was, I think, technically Mahalichek, but Tedford was really the OC. And with Daft as well, they just had the game plan all together. And then it was Signetti my second year. That year, we ran the ball really well. We threw it okay, but we had a great O-line, and our skill position players were good players, but they were young, and you could see that junior year. Like my 09 year, they were a lot more improved than 08. But I would say 09-10, obviously, I was the most comfortable. I was the most experienced. We did some good things in the run and pass game. This offense is a little different. I just feel like sometimes we get into a rhythm and then we'll have things moving and then we'll disappear for a quarter and a half. So I think that's something we need to continue to do, a little bit more play action stuff, and we never do any boots or nakeds or anything like that, which I don't get with the quarterbacks we have. That's one thing I'd like to see, a little bit more movement, especially with how young the O-line is, or all the injuries to the O-line. I think that would definitely take off some pressure with the blitzing that occurs and everything like that as well. And it's a lot easier for the receivers to make a little movement and get towards the outside. And if no one's open, the guy can either scramble or throw the ball away for not a negative play. I'd like to see a little bit more of that, but yeah, just consistency when we're running the ball well, to throw in a little play action and take a shot in there with any type of progression read with skinny underneath or whatever it be. Besides, I think our deep game is mostly all fades always. So I'd like to see a little bit more movement with that as well.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I feel like Rob and I have been kind of hoping for, was that we would use more play action, because it feels like when we do it, and there was one particular play in the Oregon game where I believe we did run play action and it did work and we just missed it. I think we missed the throw barely, but is it, do you know if it's one of those things where because we do run the RPO that we sort of feel like we don't need to run with play action? Can those two things exist together and both be effective?
I think they can. It's definitely different, and it's a lot more pressure on the O-lineman. All play actions, the route concepts take a little bit longer, so that could be a portion as well. They just don't have a ton of confidence in blocking for a little bit longer of time. But I think with what we're doing on offense, it makes sense to do it a little bit more, because we have some good backs, even though like I said, our backup was out last week. Dancy was a good player, but I think teams are focused on our run game, and we should definitely be able to take a couple shots that way in the game, which takes a lot more of the other team safeties out of the play and just opens up the field. But, it's a lot easier, as we know, from watching TV or things like that, than being on the sideline and going through it and knowing everything they know as well. So, but that would be my one negative, I would say, is that you'd like to see a couple more shots, and even not even shots, but just progression reads, flood routes on the sidelines or something like that, because it seems like our guys are a little more comfortable throwing over the sideline than they are in the middle anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that as a whole, if you're going to look at the offense right now, Rob, I'd say it's really hard to judge. And it's, if you're going to kind of have a reaction to it, like the whole time I was like talking myself off this ledge of like, okay, the offense is broken. It's been broken for a while. We should fix it with some more moves. And then I'm like, well, we also kind of started to see it work, and we've never really had it healthy this year. So it starts to become one of those things that's really, really challenging to judge. And so if I guess I had to look at the first 6 games and look at the offense, I've been pleasantly surprised with our receivers. Trevin Clark has been awesome. Crawford was surprisingly good when he's been in the game. Jeremiah Hawkins has made some pretty good plays and had opportunities to make even bigger plays. And then even, what we've seen in the absence of McAllen Castles, we've seen some good plays by Tonjes. So overall, like, when we can get the ball out, there's been some pretty great things. There are good things happening this year that I didn't see last year. And I think we're way better at blocking as well from the wide receiver position. And then the running game has kind of been absent. But I have a feeling it's just because teams are keying in on the fact that we do have 2 good runners. Like, that's the scouting report that every broadcast has, is like, Cal has 2 big runners, or like 1 big runner, and the other is really shifty, and they're really good. And then we just kind of run into these brick walls on the defensive line, and our O-line's beat up. But everything else, it's like hard to judge too much of the offense. I'm not sure how you feel about that, Kevin.
Yeah, I would say from last year, it's been a huge improvement in terms of skill players. Obviously, Laird's a stud, and you can see that with the preseason, the NFL, and everything like that. But you have a great 2 backs, and also I think it's tough with the run game with all the O linemen out. I mean, it's you can't. It's hard to gauge where we're at as a running team. I think is there 3 starters out now and like 5 guys total. I don't know for sure, but the receiver guys, obviously besides a couple drops here and but they've been making plays. They've been getting open. They've been getting downfield pass guys that we haven't seen in the past. I think they've played really well, and they stepped up, and obviously they had good off seasons together. And that's where I think this bye week and getting 2 weeks to prepare for our next game against Oregon State, who, let's hope we score 35 points at least against these guys. And obviously they're an improved team, and their offense looks pretty good. But, this is a game where we could see, where we come out with the second half of the season. And I have been impressed with the skill guys. I was a little worried going into the year, but everybody stepped up, and like you said, every person has made plays. And it's too bad the Castles kid transferred, but he has his reasons. But the kids that have been played in his place have definitely stepped up, and I don't think I've seen a tight end make a play like that, like he did against Ole Miss in a long time. And he's athletic, and you'll only get better with more practice as well.
All right, we talked about the offense. We got to turn to the other side of the ball, which I think is definitely the strength of this team. So I want your guys' thoughts on the defense so far. Have they lived up to your expectations? What could they improve for the back half of the season? And any other thoughts? So I guess I'll toss this to Andy first.
Lived up to expectations, yes. I think that this past week was the week where I was like, the defense, everyone was like, what's wrong with defense? What's wrong with defense? They're not getting the same turnovers that they were getting before. Rob and I, you and I discussed this, like, teams aren't going to just know that there's a really good secondary and just continue to throw at it. And so, yeah, we've struggled against the run a little bit. So I think that's where we've seen, the need for improvement, like D-line. We missed Palmer more than I thought we would. We also talked about hoping to see guys like Lone and Maldonado, or like these guys step up, and we just haven't seen it on the D-line as much, other than the freak that is Brett Johnson. He's so much fun to watch. So I think the one area for improvement is just kind of like we've been playing this bend not break style of defense, and that's okay because all right, we have amazing talented players that can step up and make a play like Ashton Davis made, or make a play like Trey Turner made last game, and they played fantastic against Oregon. So there's reason to believe that just like the season prior, they're kind of coming into their own and going to start being maybe a little bit more aggressive about getting the ball out and that type of stuff. So all in all, I don't know. I'm I know there's definitely an audience out there that's a little underwhelmed by it, but I'd say, top 25 S&P plus defense, what more can you really expect? Like that's exactly where we thought we'd be. If not, maybe we thought we were going to be top 5, but there's still plenty of time to get there. So yeah, I'm super pleased with the defense. I just don't know if there's any complaint that I really have with them.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I think the expectations were so high for some people in terms of turnovers, if they can repeat what they did last year. And they still could create more turnovers, but they're playing great. And I'd like to see the statistics from the top 25 defenses in terms of time of possession on the field. Like I said, when our offense goes missing sometimes, we put a lot of pressure on our defense to sustain that success throughout a game, and they've risen to the occasion very impressively. And, especially last game, I don't know. Like I said, that game I think could have gotten ugly out of early if it wasn't for our defense making plays, getting stiff within the, inside the 30-yard line. And I think you see Washington's defense the previous years. That's kind of what our defense looks like now. And the Johnson kid's a stud. I like everybody on the defense. My one thing I guess would say for run game is just missing that interior big boy that's going to eat up 2 guys every single play and open up the linebackers a little bit more. And I'd say that's the only thing that we've been missing a little bit more than last year is, you're seeing the movement get up to our second level a little bit more than last year. And last year our linebackers were running a little bit more free downhill to make plays. But you can't complain with our defense at all, and they're going to get more healthy with the bye week as well, and I think they're going to come out very strong against a pretty solid Oregon State team, who I think Oregon State will struggle again against our defense.
So was there an interior D lineman when you were with the team that really who played that role for the teams that you were with?
Yeah, we had a few guys. I mean, we had big bodies. They weren't huge, but they just ate people up. Early years, my 2008 year, Matt Malele, who's not super tall. I think he's 5'11", 6 foot, maybe. He's probably 6 foot. But, he probably played at 320 and was an absolute stud, eating people up on the inside. And then my year was Derek Hill, who was a very good player. Derek would have had a long NFL career if his body wasn't so banged up. He was an old man at a young age, but he was a great player when he was healthy, and he would dominate I think the SC lineman, what the hell's his name? First round pick center, but every year Derek definitely got up for that game and abused that guy. And we had a couple guys, and it makes a huge difference in terms of when those interior guys are healthy and stopping the run.
All right, we kind of covered the next thing I had was major improvements and keys that we wanted to do during the bye week, but I think we kind of talked about it. But the next thing I kind of wanted to use to wrap up is the final 6 games of the season. Do you guys have a prediction? Are you guys still on cloud 8 wins, or in Andy's case, cloud 9 wins? So just talk about the final 6 games of the season. Are you guys hoping to see a sweep of the 3 California schools? Maybe get the Axe back? What do you guys expect? And I'll toss to Andy first again.
Yeah. All right, let's just remember, Cloud 9 wins is 8 regular season, 1 bowl game. So, all right, let's stick with it. Even though I downgraded it anyway, so that it doesn't really matter. I've lost all credibility. 4-2 the rest of the year, right? Loss at Utah. And yeah, I guess I'm going to have to figure out another loss on the schedule. Every single game is winnable. I think we can beat Utah. I happen to think that like everything will start to loosen up a little bit now that we're done with these like supremely talented defenses. So 4-2 with the possibility of doing even more than that. I am surprisingly concerned about the Oregon State game just because of how last season played out when we had UCLA come in here and then just like completely got, like basically got blown out. So yeah, 4-2, 8 regular season wins, 4 losses. Fan base is pretty stoked. Go into a really good bowl game and get a win there and have some serious optimism going into the next year.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think every game is winnable. That UCLA game last year was so weird. I don't even try to block that one out of memory. Utah is going to be interesting for me. I heard they have a great atmosphere at their stadium, but they're pretty similar to us. They ugly up the game. I know their offense has had a couple good games, but I don't have complete confidence in their offense, and I think our defense will do a good job against them. So if we win the turnover battle in that game, I definitely think we win because I don't think they have the firepower that Oregon does. But they are obviously stout against the run. Besides that, I mean, every game is winnable, and I guess Stanford. And I don't know if that was just Washington having a bad game, but they looked pretty good. But I think we'll beat them this year and step up to the plate there. And then I hope we just end the year strong against UCLA because we haven't played great against them the past few years. But I'd say 8 wins is definitely where we're going to be at. Maybe more. I don't. I'm pretty optimistic bye week. And improve, and I have a lot of confidence in this defense keeping us in every single game. So if we make a few plays on offense, I think every game is winnable.
You heard it first here. We're going to 8 wins from the 2 guys that know Cal football the best. But we had a couple of addendum questions that we kind of wanted to talk about. I think my first one, I thought of this as we were talking, was you talked about the running backs that we have, but I wanted to ask you about the running backs you had when you in your playing days. You had some outstanding running backs behind you. When you saw guys like well, I guess not really Forsett, but you did play with Forsett for a bit, and then you had Javid and you had Shane. Did you know how good those guys were going to be, not only at Cal, but the pro careers that they had going forward?
Yeah, that's I explained my Cal career as a joke, being like I was really good at handing the ball off. I think going in and having, when I redshirted, we have Marshawn, and I got to see him, and I think people remember, maybe not, but my dad was a coach back up in Oregon. I remember calling my dad our first week being like, it's the biggest freak in the world. But Justin Forsett, played 2 games with him. You could tell he was a great player. And Javid and Shane, you knew first week there at school they could have played as true freshmen. They were both great players as well. Just elusive speed, great vision, great receivers out of the backfield, and everybody knew all these guys were going to be stars. Especially, I think obviously spending more time with Javid and Shane, what they could do with good blocking, great blocking, obviously they ran for over 200 yards a game, but what they did with good, sometimes average blocking in the run game, they still created plays, made lanes out of patience, made lanes out of just breaking tackles. Guys were incredible. I mean, I was pretty good at following plays, and I'd get yelled at all the time with those guys because they're like, what are you doing? I was like, dude, you don't know what's going to happen. They could run 90 yards or something like that. I mean, need to go block. But these guys, all great and all great people as well, and loved playing with all of them.
Who was your favorite person to play against? Is there anyone that you forged a friendship with on the other side of the field?
Oof. I never really became friends with anybody on the other side of the field. I did love playing Vontaze Burfict, though. I just remember, I think it was my junior year, they played Washington the week before, and he got kicked out for something some bogus movie did, a locker or something like that. And I just remember the beginning of the game at Arizona State my junior year. We drove down and scored, I think, first or second drive. And I was just talking shit to that guy the whole entire game, trying to freak him out, get him some penalties, get him kicked out of the game. And I always enjoyed playing them because we always beat them as well. So that was fun because that guy's a nut. So.
That's amazing. I think we could all see his NFL career kind of coming when he was in college. All right. And then since we're playing OSU next week, do you want to walk us through the final play of that OSU game and what you saw and what was there? And feel free to just take us through play by play. I'd love to hear it.
Absolutely, the infamy. That play. I'll go back. I mean, first off, besides the last play, great game. Coming back as a team, played really well that game. Besides that last play as well. But what we did a bunch of formation to the left, and all week we practiced it with Deshaun running the point on the play. So Deshaun, I think the play before got hurt or stayed down after a PI call or something like that, I believe, or maybe it was 2 plays before. But Sam Desau came in and play kind of got bunched up at the beginning. We had kind of a little high-low over the backer and the safety, and then if people remember the game at all, I was making plays the entire game, scrambling. I think I threw the ball a couple times and I was getting sacked, and we had positive plays. But initially just stepped up in the pocket, just working the pocket, thinking, I'm just going to roll out left, get going, try and see a guy. We had Rob Jordan had a corner route. I was just thinking maybe I'll just throw it to him, throw it away, and got caught moving too far. And then their linebacker kind of just was chasing me when I was rolling out left, and then that's where you go through all the motions where it starts going quick, where you're like, shit, did I go over the line of scrimmage? What are the rules? Can I throw it away? Can I break the tackle, maybe get by him? And I just got stuck in a situation where you could see the immature, not playing enough, even though you play in high school, played my whole entire life since I was 10 years old, but I've never had to play in that situation. And I think with making those plays all game, I mean, I just got stuck where I should have just initially gone read one, throw away, and us kick a field goal and go to overtime and win the game. And just try to make a play where I was making plays all game, including that drive. And it was definitely a bummer. That one hurt. And I think, the team rallied around me. They were great, though. I think the team knew as well that we probably wouldn't have been in that position without some of the plays during the game that I helped create. So, yeah.
Yeah, my immediate takeaway. Also, by the way, that's amazing. Love the breakdown, and just to hear all of that is incredible. But I think my immediate takeaway from that game when I turned to my buddy was right before the end of the second quarter, we had a kickoff after I think we had scored, and I believe we kicked it out of bounds, and Oregon State got the ball, wherever it was advanced to, 35 or 40 yard line. And then they drove down, and I swear, under a minute, and kicked a field goal. And the whole time I was turning to my buddy, I was like, that's going to come back. You know it's going to come back. And you don't have that play, you're already in field goal position, and, hopefully you make the field goal and you win the game. So, you were the last thing on my mind after that game. There were a lot of other plays that I think impacted the outcome of the game before that happened. And as you said, you played a great game up until that point. So,
yeah, that one, it's tough because I think every Cal fan in the history of the world was at that game when they meet me. But it was tough. We had so many chances. I think we got stopped 4 plays in a row on the 1-yard line in the third quarter. And, you can go to any game you've ever played in life and look at where you could do it. But, if I threw the ball away, we still got to make the field goal and win. And I think we do that. But a good life lesson. That was a adversity at a young age, and probably learned more from that moment in life than I have most. So I guess, great learning. Wish it went the other way, but it's helped me in terms of life as well.
Awesome. When Andy and I approached you asking if you could come on the podcast, we talked about it quite a bit. We're like, should we ask him? Like, is he okay with asking? And you were great. You were like more than happy to talk about it, and this was awesome. This was a great time. Thank you, Kevin, for your time coming out, talking to us via the internet on a Monday night. But we hope to see you at a game at some point this season, and then maybe also come out on the podcast maybe at the end of the year. You can help us out with a wrap up podcast as well. But you've been an amazing guest, and arguably our first real guest, because most of the guys we've had are friends or writers of the site. So this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Love talking about Cal football. And let me know where your tailgate's at for the Oregon State game. I'll be there. So looking forward to seeing you guys and watching the Bears win a bunch of games in a bowl game.
I appreciate that. And as always, go Bears.
Go Bears.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.